Welcome back, everyone. Next up, we have SeaStar Medical, trades on the NASDAQ under the symbol ICU, and is developing and commercializing innovative solutions for the consequences of hyperinflammation. The company has key near-term milestones that includes the potential FDA approval and commercial launch in its first indication, which is the treatment of critically ill children with acute kidney injury. SeaStar Medical has a world-class team that is focused on improving patient outcomes and saving lives. Please welcome its president, CEO, and director, Eric Schlorff, as well as the chief medical officer, Kevin Chung. Welcome, gentlemen.
Well, thank you very much for this opportunity today. Hey, really, I'd love to be able to share the story with everyone on SeaStar Medical and what we're all about, and really talk about, what the potential of this technology and products are, as well as really the world-class team that we have put together. And I am joined by my colleague, Kevin Chung, who will intertwine through the presentation and share some of his own background. As we begin, obviously, we've got the forward-looking statements that you guys have all read. SeaStar Medical really is a platform therapy. So this is addressing life-threatening consequences of hyperinflammation. And as you'll hear, this is really due to an imbalance of inflammatory responses. And this has damaging results on both organs as well as potential death. This is a cell-directed extracorporeal therapy, which we'll talk a little bit through. We did go public through a de-SPAC, which was back in October of 2022. And while we will talk more about the kidneys and focus on the kidneys today, you see the various other organs that we believe that this technology can help address. This is really just used for a summary slide, but we'll be covering all of these different topics throughout this presentation here today. Hyperinflammation is a serious condition. As you see on here on the left, there are various key drivers like bacterial infection, viruses, trauma, surgery. All of these can really lead to this end organ damage or failure. And it really is just the immune system responding too aggressively to an injury or to an infection. And so, this being a basis of what SeaStar does, Kevin Chung, Dr. Chung will tell you a little bit maybe about himself. But Kevin, do you want to take it from here?
Yeah, thanks, Eric. Hello, everybody. So I've been a practicing clinician for over 20 years, first as a military physician caring for combat casualties, critically ill, both multi-trauma and burn patients, over 10 years at the U.S. Army Burn Unit, and most recently as a COVID critical care doc. And I can't tell you how many times I've sat by the bedside thinking to myself, we just don't have enough tools. Since the last 20 years, we have not had anything new on the market with regards to organ support that is disease modifying. All the technologies that are available to date are supportive care only. Our technology, if you go to the next slide, is disease modifying. Why is this important? It stops the cytokine storm from propagating the organ injury that results in death. And this has been shown in multiple clinical trials previously in pilot studies. And believe it or not, this was a technology that was discovered by accident in a clinical trial evaluating a renal assist device, a bioartificial kidney. The control group had a surprisingly high survival of 70%. And this is essentially the backbone of the selective cytopheretic device, where we discovered accidentally that it's able to sequester or collect activated neutrophils and monocytes. That's the source of the cytokine storm that usually propagates in acute disease and causes end organ damage and death. Next slide, please. How does this do this? This is essentially a mimicker of nature. Blood is introduced into the dialysate portion of this device, and neutrophils and monocytes in this microenvironment are turned off. And so whereas in normal situations, these cells are the drivers of the cytokine storm. Next slide, please. This device is able to shut off these angry white or angry neutrophils and monocytes and prevents the cytokine storm from doing its damage that it usually does in the host response to anything such as injury like burns or trauma, hemorrhage, sepsis, anything that causes a trigger of that host response. Next slide, please. Every study to date has shown the same thing. Decrease in mortality, and as well as surprisingly, an elimination, virtual elimination of dialysis dependency. What does this mean? In patients with AKI who are put on this therapy, they actually recover their renal function, all of them. At first, I did not believe this data, but this is what we're seeing. And this is what we're going to look for in our trial. Next slide, please. In COVID patients, there is a significant decrease in compared to contemporaneous controls in mortality. And this is what reinvigorated the effort over the last year to get this technology evaluated in a pivotal trial. Next slide, please. So what types of patients have been treated? A variety. As you already heard, that we're targeting the pediatric market first. And that's because we have pediatric ICU and nephrology colleagues who are very enthusiastic about this device. We're getting emergency use requests. We're very close to a humanitarian device exemption, has been discussed previously. And this technology saves lives. It doesn't matter if you're a kid, a 1-year-old, or an adult. We are an organ agnostic, population disease agnostic therapy. Next slide, please.
Thanks, Kevin. I'll take it from here. So, where we're at, obviously, Kevin had mentioned the pediatric device or the pediatric humanitarian device exemption, which we have applied for in June of 2022. We are targeting a potential approval the first half of 2023. This was actually funded by the FDA's Orphan Products Division, which does basically funds various programs where they're underserved. And this is a small market, which is around 4,000 cases of pediatric acute kidney injury in the United States yearly. There's clearly a need, as you can see here. About a quarter of those patients that come into the ICU have acute kidney injury. They stay twice as long. Unfortunately, half of those children will pass, and then those that are fortunate to actually still survive, you can see that chronic diseases will linger in a majority of those patients. The humanitarian device exemption was really based on a positive pivotal / pilot trial. This was a 16-patient study that was conducted at a multi-sites, and you can see really the primary endpoint here is around safety as well as probable benefit. As you can see here, there were no SCD-related adverse events. 94% of those patients survived the therapy. 75% survived to ICU discharge, and 100% of those survivors were dialysis independent, which means they had normal kidney function at day 60, which Kevin had showed on the previous slides. So now we're gearing up for obviously a potential FDA approval of this HDE in the first half. We've now put together some of the key pieces, obviously around the supply chain, working closely with Fresenius Medical, and now engaging as well. We announced in December a license and distribution partnership with Nuwellis. So, Nuwellis has been a great partner as we prepare for this potential commercial launch here in the first half. The target is really to focus on the top 50 children's hospitals, where a majority of these patients are actually coming in. And so what you can actually then do is have a very tight, controlled launch, as well as a smaller sales force to be able to address this critical unmet need. Now, switching a little bit to the adult side, you see here on the adult, which is a much larger patient population, it actually is around 210,000 patients of the 6 million that have acute kidney injury annually. That will be in our initial target market. But Kevin's going to walk you through here on the next slide, really the design of the pivotal study, which we are commencing here in Q1. And then really a targeting of a PMA submission sometime in the 2024 obviously this is about 50 times larger than the pediatric indication. And so we obviously see this as a clear commercial value driver for the company and for shareholder value. You also can see here that in April of 2022, we received the FDA Breakthrough Device Designation for the adult indication. Kevin, you want to walk through the slide design?
Yes, thank you very much, Eric. So we've thought long and hard about the design of the study because it is very, very important to design a trial correctly and thoughtfully in order for us to optimize our chances of success. So it starts with the patient population. We're only including those that are most likely to benefit from this therapy, those that have AKI already on renal replacement therapy in the ICU, but also we're looking for an additional organ failure and signs of inflammation via biomarker. So a pseudo theragnostic approach, which is really state of the art. We are treating them, randomizing them to treatment with the selective cytopheretic device and then versus a control. The selective cytopheretic device intervention is dose variable in that we can treat up to 10 days, but if the patient doesn't need it, we don't treat for 10 days. We can treat up to, for 3 days and then stop. This protocol allows for that. And then our primary endpoint is going to be a composite endpoint of mortality and dialysis or dialysis dependency. And that increases the likelihood of us being able to hit our endpoint with the limited number of patients that you see, 200. And so when we did our power analysis, based on the previous data, we expect about a 40 to 50% decrease in the primary endpoint. We went for a 20% decrease. Again, just to optimize our chances of success. We have already received central IRB approval. It was in record time. As you know, we received approval from the FDA for the IDE, the investigational device exemption, that allows us to begin the study within 4 weeks. We had a central IRB approval, and at several sites, we're working very hard, and we're looking to activate several sites over the next few weeks.
Thanks, Kevin. So, we've talked a lot about acute kidney injury as kind of the lead indication here, but this is, as we've kind of shared with you, is that it is organ agnostic. It really is disease agnostic as long as it relates really to inflammation that is impacted by neutrophils and monocytes. And what you can see here is that we have a relationship with the University of Michigan. We are actually co-owners of the patent estate with them, but they also will go and do exploratory clinical research to really help us refine those patient populations. And so we've, with the help of University of Michigan and the investigators there, have looked at cardiorenal patients or hepatorenal patients, and you can see kind of the market sizes of some of those, as well as patients with acute respiratory distress. And so, obviously, we are starting in a very targeted area around kidneys, but as Kevin knows, lack of tools in the intensive care units today as kind of the first foray into this really does lead us to a great foundation to be able to really expand on these other indications in the future. From a corporate overview standpoint, we do have a comprehensive IP portfolio both in the United States as well as OUS, and you can see this is everything from composition of matter to methods of use, both granted as well as pending. And you can see the potential expiration. Obviously, we will be submitting for extension through the Hatch-Waxman Act, which could grant us an additional 5 years on various patents as well once we gain potential approval of some of these indications here in the near term. So from a management team standpoint, you've now met Kevin, and Kevin obviously is a huge piece of this, as well as we've got other members like Cy Iyer, Tom Mullen, and Carol Barron, who are also very critical here in being able to hit this mission and execute on our strategy. From a board of directors standpoint, we do have our chairman, Rick Barnett. He was the past president and CEO of Satellite Healthcare. Back in November, I chose to, with the help of the board, to really split up the role of chairman and CEO from a governance standpoint, because I do believe in providing the best governance for our shareholders. You can also see Alan Collins. Dr. Collins was the chief medical officer at Next Stage when it was acquired by Fresenius for $2.1 billion. He is also previously, now about a year out, but retired from Fresenius Medical as well. And as well as we've got folks like Ken Van Heel, who have board experience from a public standpoint, as he was a board member of Phoenix. Andre Lobo comes to us from Dow Chemicals Pension Plan as one of our largest investors, as well as Bruce and Rick Russell, who came from the SPAC. And obviously they've been influential and helpful in our journey as well, because they're very much a growth kind of insight type of folks. And so they think of everything from a growth standpoint. From a financial standpoint, we merged with the SPAC on October 28th. We did close a PIPE of $7 million and then secured forward agreements of about approximately 1.1 million shares. We were also able to secure a $100 million equity line of credit. For those out there maybe asking, why not have a shelf? Well, it turns out that for SPACs, de-SPAC companies, you do have to wait 12 months, and that's why we don't have a shelf today. And then their warrants are traded, but they're exercisable at $11.50. We did disclose on February 14th the number of shares that have already been redeemed, as well as that the equity line of credit is now available to the company. So, this is a company that's very focused on executing of milestones, and obviously, the pediatric humanitarian device is one of the key drivers for us. And this is really looking at a first half 2023 FDA approval and then commercial launch subsequent to that. On the adult side, obviously, we do have the IDE approved, which is a huge hurdle in the first place to be able to then go to the sites and get the sites up and going. Kevin had mentioned we are in active discussions with many sites to be able to get those sites up and going and get that first patient enrolled. But you can see kind of a timeline. This is a team very, very much focused on execution of those milestones. So, in summary, this is really a story, a platform technology, a platform product that really does address hyperinflammation, and it can do that in both acute and chronic. We didn't talk a lot about chronic indications, but obviously those are things that we have within our life cycle management that we're discussing internally. And this is a very unique way of addressing inflammation, and it really comes down to the mechanism of action. And I say that because we are actually overseen by CBER, the biologics division, as a device. And so, we really do change the cells in the sense of deactivating these neutrophils. And with the near-term regulatory milestones and clinical milestones that we have, I'm just proud to be a part of this team and help take us, to where we believe that this company and this technology should be. And with that, I will open it up to any questions.
Great job, gentlemen. Thank you for this important work as well. We have a question for Kevin Chung. So what made you decide to join the SeaStar Medical team?
Thank you, Anna. So good question. A lot of people don't know, but I was the chair of medicine at the Uniformed Services University, what I considered basically a dream job. And alongside that, as I talked about earlier, having experience at the bedside, taking care of patients, and just not having enough tools. My entire research and academic career has been focused on trying to evaluate the efficacy and safety of a variety of different blood purification techniques. And I'm a student and an enthusiast of organ support and all the different modalities that are available. And so I've written about them, and I know a lot about them. the variety of different devices that are available on the sort of being developed and available to clinicians. And of those, the selective cytopheretic device has the greatest potential. And so when Eric approached me, had the conversation initially about leaving my dream job, it was not the easiest decision, but it was a no-brainer. Doing this type of work, doing it outside the government, and taking a technology that has so much promise and taking it all the way to commercialization, so that I have it available in my practice, and so do my colleagues who are in the same position that I've been in so many times. It's something that is now a passion of mine.
Wonderful. That's a great answer. We'd love for you to talk a little bit further about the HDE process and why you believe your device for pediatric patients qualifies under this pathway.
Yeah, I'll take that one. So the Humanitarian device exemption has a couple of criteria. The first is there has to be under 8,000 patients annually. What we shared with you is the market potential right now for the pediatrics for AKI is around 4,000. So we can check that first box. The second box is that it has to be safe and have probable benefit. So safety, obviously, we've had no adverse events related to it, so we can check that box. The third box that we would check is then probable benefit. So when you think of the difference now between a PMA, which is what we're doing for the adult population, this pivotal study, that you have to show statistical significance and we'll call that efficacy. In this case, you have to show probable benefit. So the probable benefit outweighs the safety, any safety concerns that they may have, the agency that is. And so when you look at our data that we shared, we were able to reduce mortality rates by half, so 50% down to 25%, and those that survived, no patient was on dialysis at day 60. And these are children now that will be living dialysis free for the rest of their life, unless they have another event that had caused the injury in the first place. And so, we think that this is a super strong case. The agency does not grant a lot of HDEs every year. You can actually, it's all publicly disclosed. They probably will grant one or two a year, and so it is a high bar. But we're very hopeful that the agency sees it the same way.
Wonderful. So is it true that your device completely eliminated dialysis dependency post 60 days in your clinical trials with pediatric patients? It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Yes. So, go ahead, Kevin.
If I may. So yeah, it's to the point where when I first saw the data, it was not believable. Nothing is zero. And I expect in the adult trial will probably be at 1%, but in previous large-scale trials of patients undergoing renal replacement therapy in the ICU, the usual rate is about 25%. One of every four survivors end up needing long-term dialysis. For the data to date to show a need for dialysis of zero is quite remarkable, and that's something that we're hyper focused on in our clinical trial.
Wow. So further explain the benefits of the FDA's Breakthrough Designation for your device and your company. I know that's not easy to come by.
Yeah. So the FDA's Breakthrough Device Designation really is a way for companies to be able to have more closer relationships and interactions with the agency. So, we can, there's various tools where we can have more informal calls with them to talk about various topics, et cetera. We really present, you go through a process where you actually present to them through a submission and, it really request the designation. And with the strong clinical data that we had, I believe that in their minds, it was almost a no-brainer that they would grant that kind of designation for it. And so, it really does allow us to have a good working relationship with the FDA.
Wonderful. So why are you pursuing the approval for children before the larger adult market?
Yeah, so sometimes that's just the way it happens. But one of the things that we learn through this is history is an important guide and helps us learn each and every time. And so back in 2012, there was a clinical study done in adults, but one of the issues was that calcium, which is needed for this therapy, there was actually a calcium shortage in the United States at that time. And so because of that, the company pivoted to actually applying to this FDA grant for children, and essentially it was a shorter or lower hurdle at the time, and so that's really kind of how it all came about. And from our perspective, it really is serendipitous and actually very advantageous for us to be launching this in children, because most companies don't actually do this. Isn't the lead product to go into children first and then adults. It's almost always adults, then children. And so I can tell you the pediatric nephrologists and critical care community are absolutely ecstatic. And they feel really blessed that this is something directly in for them before the adult population.
I can imagine. So how readily will physicians and hospitals adapt your technology? And how much training will it take to get the hospital staff up to speed about using your product?
I can take this, Eric. So thank you, Anna, for that question. So believe it or not, this is a module that attaches to an already existing renal replacement therapy circuit. And so in terms of the technical difficulty of this device, any site that is able to do and deliver a renal replacement therapy can do this, pretty much with very, very little training. And so in terms of adoption, it depends on our clinical trial, what our clinical trial demonstrates. If it demonstrates what we think it's going to demonstrate, this could be put on every single patient who goes on renal replacement therapy in the ICU.
That's wonderful. So will you be publishing study data in peer-reviewed journals or presenting at conferences?
Yes, thank you for that. So next week is the AKI-CRRT meeting, and we have 3 abstracts that were accepted, and these were abstracts from 3 different hospitals across the country who just submitted their experience with treatment with the SCD in their patient population, one from Cincinnati, one from Michigan, and another from San Antonio, of all places. A couple of those were emergency use cases. But that's, basically in the fabric of our company. We are interested in generalizing our knowledge as much as possible and spreading the word about the therapy. And absolutely, when we get this therapy in this pivotal trial tested and it shows efficacy and safety, we're going to get that out there as soon as possible.
And will you pursue additional indications now or wait for completion of the trial?
In order for our PMA submission, we'll need the results of that trial. And so I should say that, for the AKI indication, as Eric already alluded to, there are many other indications that we're interested in looking at. This is just the first step, the first disease that we're attacking only because it's convenient. Patients are already on renal replacement therapy. We're going to expand beyond that to other types of organ failures, as Eric already discussed.
And last question, can you talk a little bit more about the status of your FDA application? What outstanding items are there? Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, it's a great question, and we just are not really in a position to talk through, what some of those outstanding things. What I can tell you though is that the relationship with the FDA and the agency has been very collaborative, and as we continue to move through that, this is a process that does take time. The hurdle is much like a PMA, so the application itself has that kind of stringency, and that's the way they look at it. And so we shouldn't expect anything less from the agency to ensure the safety and probable benefit is there for these patients. And so we're just excited to be able to work with the agency at this time.
Great. Well, thank you for your time, presentation, and this good work, gentlemen. Do you have any closing remarks for our viewers?
Yeah, look, obviously, we're excited about the future of this company. We are traded under NASDAQ under the ticker symbol ICU. This is a team, as you see in Kevin and myself, that's very focused on execution. And we're just going to go back to work and nose to the grindstone to get and execute on these milestones.
Wonderful.
So
well, thank you
you
for your time today.
Thanks, Anna.
Thank you.
Okay, stay with us, everyone. We'll be right back.